The story of Toni Braxton is one of the most surprising and emotional journeys in the music industry, because from the outside, her life once looked perfect, filled with fame, awards, and global success, but behind that image was a very different reality that most people never saw. She was born into a strict religious household where discipline and rules shaped her early life, and from a young age, music became both her escape and her identity. Singing in church gave her confidence and helped her develop a voice that would later captivate millions around the world. When she finally entered the music industry, everything seemed to happen quickly. Her debut album became a massive success, her songs were played everywhere, and she became one of the most recognizable voices of the 1990s. Hits like Unbreak My Heart turned her into a global superstar, and from the outside, it looked like she had achieved everything anyone could dream of. However, what many people did not realize was that success in the music industry does not always mean financial stability. Despite selling millions of records, Toni Braxton was trapped in a contract that paid her very little compared to profits her music was generating. This created a painful gap between her public image and her real life. While fans saw luxury and fame, she was quietly struggling with money problems that kept getting worse over time. Eventually, this led to a shocking moment that confused many people. She filed for bankruptcy. For someone who was at the top of the charts, this news felt unbelievable, but revealed a deeper truth about how the industry can sometimes take advantage of artists, especially those who enter it without fully understanding the business side. Even after this setback, she did not give up. She continued to work, release music, and rebuild her career, showing a level of determination that many people admire. But just as things seemed to be improving, new challenges appeared, and this time they were not just financial but deeply personal and physical. Her health began to decline, and she faced a serious condition known as lupus, a disease that can affect many parts of the body and make everyday life extremely difficult. This added another layer of struggle to her life, because now she was not only dealing with career pressure, but also fighting to maintain her health. Despite all this, she kept performing, kept showing up for her fans, and kept trying to move forward, even when her body was telling her to stop. This period of her life shows how strong she really is, because many people in her position might have stepped away completely, but she continued to fight for her place in industry. At the same time, her personal life was going through its own ups and downs. Her marriage faced difficulties, and balancing family, career, and health became increasingly hard. All these pressures combined created a situation where it often felt like everything in her life was pulling in different directions. The image of a glamorous superstar slowly started to fade, replaced by the reality of a woman trying to hold everything together while facing challenges that most people could not imagine. Yet even in these difficult moments, she did not completely disappear. She found ways to return to perform and to reconnect with her audience. This ability to come back again and again became one of the most defining parts of her story, because it showed that her journey was not just about success, but about survival, resilience, and the willingness to keep going no matter how many times life knocked her down. As the years went on, the story of Toni Braxton continued to evolve in ways that kept surprising people, because just when it seemed like she had faced every possible challenge, new twists appeared that added even more complexity to her life. After dealing with financial struggles and health issues, she once again found herself in a difficult situation when she had to file for bankruptcy a second time, which shocked many fans who believed she had already recovered from her earlier problems. This second setback showed how unpredictable life can be, especially in an industry where income can change quickly and unexpected events can create huge financial pressure. At the same time, she was dealing with the responsibilities of being a mother, including raising a child with special needs, which brought both challenges and moments of deep emotional growth. Instead of hiding from these struggles, she eventually chose to speak about them publicly, helping to raise awareness and connect with people who were going through similar experiences. This honesty made her story even more powerful, because it showed a side of her that went beyond music and fame. In recent years, her life has also included moments that left fans confused and curious, especially when news broke about a secret marriage that seemed to fall apart almost immediately. This kind of unexpected event added a sense of mystery to her story, making people wonder what was really happening behind the scenes. Despite all the speculation, she has remained relatively private about certain parts of her life, choosing to focus more on her work and her family rather than explaining every detail to the public. What stands out the most about her current life is that she is still active, still performing, and still connecting with audiences who have followed her journey for decades. Even after everything she has been through, she continues to step onto the stage and deliver performances that remind people why they fell in love with her voice in the first place. This ability to endure and continue is what makes her story so compelling, because it is not just about the highs and lows, but about the way she has managed to keep moving forward through all of it. While some headlines may try to paint her life in extreme ways, suggesting that she has lost everything or reached a point of complete downfall, the truth is much more balanced and human. She has faced serious financial problems, yes, but she has also rebuilt parts of her life. She has dealt with health issues, but she has also found ways to manage them and continue working. She has experienced personal struggles, but she has also grown from them. This combination of challenges and comebacks creates a story that feels real and relatable, rather than simply dramatic. Today, her life is not defined by one single moment of success or failure, but by the entire journey she has taken. It is a journey that includes fame, loss, recovery, and resilience, all woven together into a story that continues to evolve. For many people, this makes her more inspiring than ever, because she represents the idea that even when things fall apart, it is still possible to rebuild, to adapt, and to keep going. In the end, the story of Toni Braxton is not really about going from millionaire to homeless, as some might suggest a dramatic effect, but about facing real-life struggles and finding ways to survive them, which is something that many people can understand and connect with on a deeper level. As Toni Braxton moved further into the later stages of her career, her life became less about sudden fame and more about long-term survival in an industry that constantly changes. Unlike the early years, where everything seemed to rise quickly, the later years were filled with slower progress, more personal reflection, and a deeper understanding of what fame had actually cost her. One of the most important things to understand is that success in the music world often looks very different from how it feels to the artists living it. From the outside, people saw awards, sold-out shows, and worldwide recognition. But inside her personal life, she was dealing with pressure that never fully went away. Health problems continued to affect her energy and performance, and she had to carefully manage her schedule to avoid pushing her body too far. Living with lupus meant that even simple tasks could sometimes feel overwhelming, and this forced her to rethink how she approached her career. Instead of chasing constant output like she did in her early years, she began focusing more on balance and sustainability. This shift was not easy, because the entertainment industry often expects artists to stay constantly visible, but she had to prioritize her health and family. At the same time, her role as a mother became even more important in her life. Raising a child with autism required patience, learning, and emotional strength, and she openly shared parts of this journey to help reduce stigma and encourage understanding. This created a new side of her public image, one that was less about glamour and more about real-life challenges. Many fans began to respect her even more because they saw how openly she handled difficult topics that others often avoided. Financially, her situation also became more stable over time, although the earlier struggles with bankruptcy had already left a lasting impact. She learned to manage her career more carefully, making decisions that protected her long-term well-being rather than just short-term success. This included choosing projects that felt meaningful rather than simply chasing commercial hits. In some ways, this period of her life was less dramatic but more mature, as she focused on rebuilding stability step by step. However, public curiosity about her life never disappeared. Even when she was not actively in the headlines, people continued to search for updates, especially after unusual stories, such as her brief and confusing marriage situation circulated online. These moments often created waves of speculation, even when the full truth was not clear. But through all of this attention, she maintained a level of privacy, choosing not to reveal every detail of her personal decisions. This balance between public fame and private life became a defining feature of her later years. She was no longer just a chart-topping singer. She had become a figure who represented endurance in the face of multiple life challenges. What makes her story stand out even more is that she never completely stepped away from music. Even when she reduced her workload, she still returned to the stage, still recorded songs, and still connected with audiences who had grown up listening to her voice. This continued presence reminded people that her identity was deeply tied to music, even when life outside it became complicated. Over time, her story transformed from a traditional rise and fall celebrity narrative into something more realistic and layered. It became a story about adaptation, where success is not measured only by fame or money, but by the ability to keep going despite setbacks. For many fans, this makes her journey more meaningful because it reflects real life in a way that simple success stories often do not. Her path shows that even after major struggles, it is possible to rebuild, adjust, and find a new kind of stability that fits the reality of one's life. In more recent years, the public image of Toni Braxton has continued to evolve, shaped by both her legacy in music and the ongoing curiosity about her personal life. While she may not dominate the charts the way she once did in the 1990s, her influence in the music industry remains strong, and her voice is still considered one of the most recognizable in R&B history. Many artists who came after her have cited her as an inspiration, showing how her impact extends far beyond her own discography. At the same time, her life has become a subject of constant public discussion, especially on social media platforms where old stories are often revisited and new rumors spread quickly. This has created a situation where parts of her life are sometimes exaggerated or misunderstood, especially when headlines focus on dramatic wording rather than accurate detail. Despite this, she continues to maintain her presence in the entertainment world through performances, appearances, and occasional projects that remind audiences of her talent. One of the most important aspects of her current life is how she has learned to navigate fame on her own terms. Unlike the early stages of her career, where contracts and industry demands control much of her direction, she now has more freedom to choose what she wants to do and when she wants to do it. This independence allows her to focus more on personal well-being and meaningful work rather than constant pressure. Another key part of her journey is how she has turned past struggles into lessons that can help others. Whether it is financial hardship, health challenges, or emotional difficulties, she has spoken about these experiences in ways that encourage awareness and understanding. This has helped reshape her public image from just a pop star into someone who represents resilience and honesty. Even moments of controversy or confusion in her personal life have not overshadowed her overall legacy, because people continue to return to her music and the emotional connection it creates. Songs like Unbreak My Heart still resonate with listeners today, proving that her work has a timeless quality that goes beyond trends. As time moves forward, her story continues to be interpreted in different ways, sometimes exaggerated for entertainment purposes, but always rooted in a real human journey filled with highs and lows. What remains clear is that she has survived an industry that is known for quickly replacing its stars, and she has done so while facing challenges that many people never see behind the scenes. Her life is not simply a story of success or failure, but a combination of both, shaped by personal choices, external pressures, and unexpected events. In many ways, she represents the reality of long-term fame. It is not always glamorous, it is not always stable, but it can still be meaningful. Today, her story continues to attract attention because it feels honest and relatable, even when parts are misunderstood or dramatized online. And that is what keeps her legacy alive. Not just the music she created, but the journey she has lived, which continues to evolve with time. Toni Braxton's life story is one of those rare music industry journeys that feels far bigger than just fame, because it is not only about success, but also about pressure, survival, and the hidden emotional cost of being at the top for decades. When people first think about her, they usually remember the glamorous side, the powerful, deep voice that defined 90s R&B, the emotional ballads that became global hits, the Grammy Awards, the sold-out shows, and the image of a confident superstar standing under bright stage lights. But that surface-level image only tells a small part of her story. The real journey of Toni Braxton begins long before fame, in a strict and disciplined household in Maryland, where her father was a Methodist minister, and her upbringing was shaped by strong religious rules and expectations. In that environment, life was not about entertainment or freedom in the modern sense. It was about structure, faith, obedience, and control. Music existed in the home, but mostly in the form of church singing, gospel traditions, and spiritual discipline. Even everyday behavior was influenced by religious beliefs, and pop culture or mainstream music was often treated with caution or even disapproval. Yet inside that controlled world, Something powerful was quietly forming in Toni. She had a voice that naturally stood out even as a child, not because it was trained at first, but because it carried emotion, depth, and a raw feeling that people could instantly recognize. Her early singing experience came from church choirs, where she learned how to project, how to control breath, and how to connect emotion with sound. At the same time, her home life created a kind of tension inside her, because while she was expected to follow strict rules, she was also naturally drawn to music that existed outside those rules. As she grew older, she began secretly listening to soul and R&B artists like Stevie Wonder and other legends whose music carried emotional honesty and storytelling power that felt very different from the controlled environment she lived in. That contrast between strict religious upbringing and emotional musical freedom became one of the most important foundations of her identity as an artist. Unlike many performers who grow up fully immersed in the entertainment world, Toni's early life was a balance between restriction and hidden expression. She was not immediately pushed into fame or professional music. Instead, she experienced the same uncertainty and self-doubt that many young people face when trying to understand their future. Even when she eventually formed music connections with her sisters and became part of the Braxtons, success was not instant or stable. The group worked hard to get attention in the industry, and while they had talent, the music business at the time was highly competitive and difficult to break into. Their early efforts led to opportunities, but not immediate superstardom. However, what changed everything was Toni's individual voice. Industry professionals quickly realized that her vocal tone carried something unique, deep, emotional, slightly husky, and filled with a kind of vulnerability that stood out in R&B music. This discovery eventually led to her solo career, which became the turning point of her life. When she began working with major producers like Babyface and entered the mainstream music world in the early 1990s, everything changed very quickly. Her debut solo work brought instant recognition, and her songs began connecting with millions of listeners worldwide. Tracks like Another Sad Love Song and Breathe Again were not just hits. They became emotional experiences for people who related to heartbreak, love, and loss. Her voice had the rare ability to make listeners feel personal emotions even if they were hearing the song for the first time. This success positioned her as one of the leading voices of her generation. However, what many people did not see behind this rise was the complicated structure of the music industry itself. At the time, record contracts often placed artists in agreements where labels controlled most financial decisions, production costs, and revenue distribution. This meant that even when an artist became globally successful, the actual money they received could be much lower than expected. Toni Braxton entered the system at a young age, like many artists, without full awareness of how restrictive and long-term